Hi everyone. So first of all, I just want to say a few very brief things about, well, the fact that it's been such a long time since I've made a video and the fact that that kind of came as a surprise to me. I don't want to get into this too much, and if you guys really want a more personal kind of update video from me, do let me know and I might make that. But actually what I'll probably do is I will actually send out a newsletter at the beginning of August, and I will make an audio file just giving you more of a kind of in-depth update as to what's been going on in my life and just a little bit more of a personal take on why I disappeared again from YouTube and just the thoughts that have been going in my mind. And I'm not like saying that to make an excuse, it's just that it came as a surprise to me. I thought that after I finished my work on my first year work for my PhD and went on a 3-month break, which again I'll talk about probably in that audio file, I thought that I would have a lot of energy. I thought that my problem with not creating content as Anya Orga was kind of not having enough time and energy. And I think that was the case during the Masters, but I think during the PhD I was blaming lack of energy and time to explain a lot of different things that weren't happening in my life. And as soon as I had the time and had sort of, well, should have had the energy, as in I was not doing too much, I was sleeping lots, I was recovering, I was taking a break, I think it took that to realise that time and energy was not the problem, and that I just got myself, I got a little bit lost somewhere along the way during my first year of my PhD, I'm not going to lie. I went a little bit off track, I think, in more ways than one, and it just, everything feels a little bit shaken up. But today I actually just wanted to make a slightly more focused video, I suppose, because okay, so as some of you may know, if you're following me on Instagram, I bought the statue that you see at the centerpiece of this altar a little while ago in Glasgow. I went on a little sort of mini day trip to Glasgow, which I never posted the pictures on Instagram. I might do that retrospectively. And I bought this statue. It had been in my mind to buy for quite a while. I saw it in person for the first time in January when I first went to Glasgow, and I had never really intended to purchase a statue of the Morrigan. I'd flirted with the idea a few times. It didn't really appeal to me. I kept thinking, no, I'll make my own. And when I saw it in person, it just appealed to me more than I thought it would, if you know what I mean. And I decided then and there that I would come back and buy it sometime. I didn't know it would take me 6 months, but eventually I went back and bought it for the altar. And I reconstructed the altar. I took the whole altar down because my girlfriend has actually moved in with me. That's another thing that I might touch on in the audio file. And we have been moving her stuff in. We also, my dad came over to help us, you know, paint the wall, move things around, etc., etc. And essentially there were a lot of things in boxes to be unboxed, and I put away everything on my altar. I dismantled the altar, put it all into a box to keep it kind of safe while we were moving furniture and so on. And I figured, you know, I would put it back together when I had the statue and kind of remake the altar with the statue in this as the centerpiece, because I knew that I would need to reconstruct this whole top piece here in order to fit the statue. And I was excited about that, and you know, I got to it and I made the altar, and I was really happy with it. As you can see, I've got a new altar cloth down, which is actually an old scarf of mine. And I reconstructed the altar pretty much along the same lines as it was before. I know you guys haven't seen it a lot in videos recently, but it is pretty much the same as what it was when I took it all down. And when I was finished, it's very beautiful, and I like the aesthetic a lot. Oh, I will mention that the two purple candles here, they're going to be black. I don't really like the fact that it's all purple. That was not my intention. You can't even see the full scope of it here. It's quite tall. It's got 2 big black wings over the top as well. And I just, you know what? I haven't sat at it since I made it. I just haven't. And I realised that I think what my practice needs right now is an overhaul. And ever since I created the first kind of tier, like ever since I created this kind of Morrigan shrine, and I first created that quite a long time ago. It might even be as much as a year ago. I honestly don't remember now, but it is quite a long time ago. Ever since I created it, I've been spending less and less time at the altar. I've been less and less involved with my practice and with ritual, and that is probably a coincidence because I was really happy with how it looked originally. It felt right. So I think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's the design of the altar or anything, but I think I've just got this association now with this altar setup, and it's not doing anything for me. So very sadly, I think the whole lot is going to have to go. I think I need to think it through. I really want to keep the Morrigan shrine, and I just need to make a decision as to whether it's going to go elsewhere, and I'll create a separate altar for sort of more general contemplation and ritual and so forth. Or if I can manage to kind of put it to one side on the altar and kind of have a split altar. Looking at it now, I think that's going to be tough because the shrine section is so large. It takes up a lot more than half of the space, of the wall space above the altar, and the wings, frankly, are the span of the altar. But I think it has to be done. I think I need to... Back when I first got into my spiritual practice, as it roughly has been for the last, I don't know how many years now, 3, 5, I'm not sure, probably more actually, 5 or 6 years. What was most important to me with an altar, and because I was starting from scratch, I was starting from ground zero, what was most important to me with an altar was depicting the things that I wanted to celebrate. And everything on the altar would have a purpose. It would have a role to play in the set ritual that I had constructed for myself, and I would do kind of the same core ritual every time, which is another thing I haven't done in a long time, and I miss having that kind of structure to return to again and again, to get me into that headspace, into that mind space, to get me feeling connected. And I think over time I just accumulated more and more stuff, and some things that used to have a purpose in my rituals that I was no longer using would just kind of stay on the altar, and then I would just pick up kind of pretty things and add them, and over time I think it's become more of an aesthetic thing. And as I said, it's very beautiful to look at, and I'm really loath to take it all down. Because it looks so wonderful to me. It's what I was aiming to construct, but it's not functional. It's not functioning for me as an altar. I'm not using the different components of it. It's not inspiring me to come to the altar to do practice, to do ritual. It's not inspiring me to do much of anything. It's very beautiful when all the candles are lit and I sit at it and look at it. It's very nice to look at, but it's not doing me any good in terms of reinvigorating my practice. So I think I want to get back to basics. I think it's time, and I started thinking about this while I was in Kerry. I spent a month in Kerry. I started to think about, what kind of, what new metaphors do I want to bring into play? I wanted to start to think of ritual almost as a space, as a physical space. Ritual as the altar, and the altar as the ritual. And I also wanted to think of ritual as a story, and my ritual as an enacted piece of art again, as a visual artwork in terms of the altar, and also as a piece of literature, a story that I insert myself into. So kind of a space and a narrative all at once that I'm inserting myself into every time I come to altar. And that is just not a feeling that I'm getting from this altar. And it's something that I would advise people when I did some spiritual mentoring and that kind of stuff back in the day, which I do hope at some point to do again, to offer again at some point. But as a side note, I'm kind of waiting until I have pulled myself back together spiritually. I have to kind of feed my own spirituality first before I can help anyone else with theirs. And I know that I would suggest to, I know that I would give the advice to make the altar almost a sort of journey, and to make sure that the items do have significance, that everything is there for a reason. And that doesn't always have to be the case, but for me, when I'm stagnating, that tends to be the way to get myself up and going. So another thing I've been thinking is that I do want to maybe return to some of the aesthetics that I enjoyed earlier on in my practice, or that I kind of tended towards earlier on in my practice a couple of years ago. I was out for a walk this morning and I had this sudden flash of just deep, just soul-wrenching nostalgia for my old flat in Ranelagh in Dublin. And I just had this vivid memory of walking in the park or running in the park, and just the feeling that I had there, and then remembering what that flat felt like and my altar there, and how it felt to wake up early in the morning, and how it felt to be in that space, how it felt to feel called to the altar in that space. And I realised that when I was living in Ranelagh in Dublin, that space for me was enchanted. It was very much an enchanted space. And it wasn't until I actually kind of moved to that apartment that I started to re-enchant my life, that I started to re-enchant the experience of existence, to re-enchant the earth and my surroundings, and to really notice the green spaces around me, to really notice the turning of the seasons. And ever since I've come to Edinburgh, I've been becoming increasingly disenchanted. And I don't think that has to... I think at the back of my head I've been blaming Edinburgh. I've been wanting and yearning to go back to Dublin to revisit that sense of enchantment. But I think it's really just been a bit of a coincidence. Again, like with this altar, there's nothing inherently wrong with the altar. It just has coincided with a really bad downturn, a really bad slump in my practice. So I just remembered there was one particular altar that I was particularly keen on. It was maybe my last really deep and involved ritual that I did, that I can remember doing, and it was maybe 3 years ago. It was my summer solstice ritual, and it probably was my summer solstice ritual of 2014. In fact, I'm pretty positive that it was. So that's more than 3 years ago. That's a long time. And I had that picture is actually one of the earliest ones on my Instagram feed. So I saw it recently on my Instagram feed because I was just scrolling through old stuff. And it really brought back this particular feeling that I had in that apartment, that enchantment, that investment that I had in my practice, in this work of celebrating the earth, of celebrating its cycles, of celebrating our place in the earth, or on the earth and in the cosmos. And the motivation that I had, it blows me away now. I remember getting up before dawn on the summer solstice, I think it was that year, and going out to watch the sunrise. And to do that I had to get up at 4:45, which to me, especially at that time when I wasn't exactly an early riser, was no mean feat. And I can't even imagine having the motivation or the energy to do that now. So yeah, a long story short, I kind of want to do a two-pronged thing. I want to return to some of the feelings that that kind of altar brought to me. I want to return to that aesthetic a little bit. I want to remind myself of that, tap back into the excitement that I felt sitting at that old altar. But I also want to move forward. I also want to incorporate new things. So yeah, I'll leave it there for the moment. If I manage to construct this altar today or soon, then I might shoot again and show you the finished product, but it might take me a little while, so we'll see. Hi again, guys. So this is the completed altar. As you can see, the Morrigan shrine didn't end up staying on it. I had a go with putting it on the right hand side and then the Buddha statue on the left, but it was just too much. It was too crowded, too busy, and just really wasn't going to work out. It was two altars on one surface, if you know what I mean. And I just decided in the end to separate the two altars, and the Morrigan shrine is now on another side of the room in the living room. So I guess essentially what I've done is I've expanded the altar that I had in the bedroom, which was the simple altar based around the Buddha statue with some crystals. I've kind of expanded that into my primary altar here in the living room, and then kind of reduced what was my main altar that was very focused on the Morrigan into just simply being a Morrigan shrine, just dedicated solely to me working with the Morrigan. And it wasn't necessarily what I was aiming for, but I'm really, really happy with it. I'm really happy with how this turned out. As soon as I had everything laid out as it is now, it started to feel more like something that was going to call me to the altar and something that was going to call me back to my practice again. I don't think I had realised the extent to which I really missed having a space that really represents my own kind of vision of cosmos, and the primary metaphors that I like to use to kind of tap me into the processes of cosmos and the cycles of the earth and so on. So I feel like this altar now has more focus again on the kind of creation, destruction, light, dark duality that I like to play with and to focus on in my practice. So that's left and right at the back, as it kind of always has been. And a new element that I've brought in is, I'll talk about the Buddha statue in a second. A new element that I've brought in, which you probably won't be able to make out very easily, is a sort of, not a perfect circle, but a sort of circle of stones, kind of around here and around, on the other side, which I've laid out to represent the 8 Sabbaths, the Wheel of the Year. This just kind of came to me. I was moving my bigger stones, my kind of bigger tumble stones in here, and I was trying to figure out how I wanted to display them on the altar in here, how I was going to use them. And it suddenly occurred to me that I had 8 or 9 large tumbled stones, and the idea of constructing a sort of circle on my altar to represent the Wheel of the Year came to me. And I'm really, really happy with the result. It's subtle enough, but I immediately can see it and know what it is. And I've picked out stones that, to me, that represent each Sabbath, and that kind of actually was surprisingly easy for me as well. I very quickly thought, yeah, well, you know, that's very definitely Imbolc for me. Or I had a stone that I already associated with Bealtaine, because my dad actually gave it to me on Bealtaine one year. So I'm really liking having a representation of that on the altar, because the Wheel of the Year for me is representative not just of the movement of the earth around the sun, but also kind of as a microcosm of the macrocosm, as a sort of our earthly experience of the constant cyclical or spiral process of the universe. So that's the main new element. I've brought back a box that I used to use. I hesitate to say for spellcraft, because it's not really, and there's nothing I do in my practice that really looks like spellcraft or that I really think of as spellcraft. But I went through a phase when my practice was at its strongest of using boxes to place certain items into them at various periods. I might write something, I might, choose specific stones or symbols to put into them, to just focus my mind on something in particular. And I'm thinking that I'm going to do this in very particularly a devotional context this time around. I haven't yet set that up, but there was something about that really appealed to me, and having the candles beside it and maybe placing stones around and that kind of thing. That really, really appealed to me when I first started doing it. I originally did it on my main altar, and then I did it on my Morrigan altar for a while, and I felt like I never quite got into the swing of how I was going to do that, what I was going to do with that. But there's something about the sealed box like that has always appealed to me, that there's something very enticing about it, something very magical about it for me, and it really kind of represents mystery and also the self and kind of the inner world and that kind of thing for me. So I'm really looking forward to working with that again and figuring out maybe a more kind of regular practice with that. Then I've got, I've brought back my oil burner, because I used to use an oil burner back in the day a lot on my primary altar, and I decided to bring that back because I'm now going to be burning herbs on the Morrigan shrine. So I wanted some way to kind of create smells here on the altar, and I really miss burning oils. So I've got a little kind of bottle-y thing that I picked up at a charity shop one time that I've been kind of wanting something specific to do with, and I'm going to probably mix water and oils in that if I can figure out a way of easily doing that, so that I can easily kind of pour that into the oil burner and set that going at will. That's another thing that I need to think about more, and how I'm going to interact that or insert that or integrate that into my ritual, my ritual kind of routine. And then another kind of new thing, but also not new thing, because I used to have him on my altar and I've had him on my bedroom altar for a long time, is the Buddha statue. I think I, at some point in the future, will want to make an entire video on the image of the Buddha, my thoughts on Buddhism, to what extent it kind of impacts my practice, and not, and how I feel about using a Buddha statue and so on, because I just want to flag that it makes a lot of intuitive sense to me. There's something about the symbolism of the Buddha, the story of the Buddha, and some of the tenets of Buddhism that really strike a chord with me, and that really describe some of the sort of ecstatic or mystery kind of experiences that I've had in my practice. I guess kind of what I'm trying to say is that the Buddha, for me, I almost use him as a representation of my pantheism. And, you know, that might sound like a slightly strange statement, but like I say, I think this is something that I will talk about more in another video at some time in the future. But I think that's all I want to say for now. I think, you know, any of the other items on the altar have been there all along or have made a return. And I'm just, like I say, I feel like this space now actually is a physical representation of my favourite metaphors and symbols to describe how I see cosmos and how I want to engage with cosmos in ritual and through my spiritual practice. And the Morrigan Shrine is part of that too, but I feel a bit like my work with the Morrigan is something slightly different, and I think I was really trying to bring that into the core of my practice. I was really trying to bring her in to the centre of my worldview, and it just never quite worked. It just didn't quite sit right. I feel like there's kind of two sides to my practice and to how I like to engage with divinity. And on the one hand, there is the Morrigan, very kind of dark, mysterious, sinister almost, this almost sort of spooky kind of, where awe edges on fear. That is very definitely one kind of component of the kind of religious experience that really gets me kind of going, and then the kind of altar and work and meditation and so on, symbolism that really kind of gets me into a very kind of sacred mindset. But then on the other hand, there's kind of, I feel like if I focus on that, it edges out the kind of what I think of as the Gaia side of my spirituality, and that is huge for me. It's a lot more focused on light and creation rather than destruction. It's a lot more focused on the kind of overt manifestations of cosmos, of the universe, the patterns on Earth and all around us, the cycles that we're a part of. So it's a lot more active, a lot more, for want of a better term, kind of positive and light oriented. And I think I need both in my practice, but I think for the most part my go-to is Gaia, and Gaia as a term that I use to mean cosmos, essentially. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I'm sure I'll be making more videos about this soon, especially as I gradually make my way back into my practice, because things got very stagnant there for a while and I'm really ready to step it up now. Kind of step it up to the next level again and get back into a much stronger daily practice, weekly practice, monthly practice, and so on. So yeah, watch this space. Thanks for watching, and as I've kind of flagged, there will be hopefully plenty more videos on these kinds of topics coming up again soon.